Um, there's a sound in the jungles of Vietnam that splits men into two groups forever. The ones who heard it and breathed a sigh of relief, and the ones who heard it and knew the dead were already coming back to collect their souls. A soft, hollow thump, almost gentle, like a fist hitting the bottom of an empty oil drum deep in the night. Nothing like the sharp crack of an M16 or the roar of a machine gun. Just a low, ominous pop. Then, 1 to 2 seconds of absolute, terrifying silence. In that silence, faint shadows moved through the air. Not quite shadows, whispers that weren't wind. Sometimes they shielded you. Sometimes they reached for you. If you were American infantry, that thump meant your Grenadier had just unleashed hell on the enemy, or opened a door the living should never touch. If you were NVA or VC on the receiving end, that thump meant not just death, but that the ghosts of every man the launcher had ever killed were riding that round straight toward you, ready to drag you down with them. The weapon that made this sound was the M79 grenade launcher. Troops called it the Thumper, the Blooper, Big Ed. But the ones who carried it in the worst places started calling it something else in whispers. The Echo Thumper. This isn't really a story about the weapon. It's about the man who carried it. Because the Grenadier in a Vietnam rifle squad held the most powerful and most haunted position in the entire unit at the same time. And what that combination did to the men who lived it is something almost nobody talks about, because the Army still tries to bury it. Here's what you need to understand. After Korea, the Army identified a gap in infantry firepower that had been getting men killed for 3 wars. A hand grenade could be thrown maybe 35 meters. The lightest mortar couldn't fire closer than 300. That left a 260-meter dead zone in the middle of every firefight where the squad had 0 explosive options. Army studies found that 40% of engagements in rough terrain happened inside that gap. 40% of the time, the only answer was sending a rifleman close enough to throw a frag and hoping whoever was dug in on the other end didn't kill him first. So Springfield Armory built the solution. A single-shot break-action launcher that looked like an oversized shotgun. You cracked it open, dropped in 140-millimeter round, snapped it shut, and pulled the trigger. The engineering trick, a high-low pressure system borrowed from German research, let you throw that grenade 350 meters from your shoulder without dislocating anything. The recoil was a firm push, not a punch. December 1960, officially adopted. By 1965, every infantry squad heading to Vietnam had one. And whoever got assigned to carry it made a trade that shaped every single day they spent in country. You handed in your rifle. That's the deal nobody mentions when they talk about the Thumper's kill radius and its 300 steel fragments per round. The Grenadier surrendered his M16 and got an M1911 pistol, 7 rounds of .45 caliber, as his only self-defense weapon. In a war where contact happened at a distance you could spit, your backup for the most dangerous moments was a handgun against automatic rifles. Let me walk you through what that actually meant on the ground, because the weapon's ammunition is what made the Grenadier both indispensable and haunted. The standard round, the M406 high explosive, threw over 300 steel fragments outward at 5,000 feet per second on impact. 5-meter kill radius, casualty radius of 130 meters. 1 round, 1 man, a kill zone wider than a football field. Medical personnel in Vietnam reported that M79 wounds inside the kill radius were frequently unsurvivable even with immediate surgery. That's not wounding, that's erasure. For close range, the M576 buckshot round, 20 00 pellets packed into a 40-millimeter case. No fuse, no arming distance, a wall of lead the instant you pulled the trigger at 15 meters. 13 of those pellets landed inside a circle you could cover with both hands. Then the M397, the jumping grenade. It hit the ground, kicked itself 5 feet into the air, and detonated, raining fragments down on anyone who'd done the smart thing and gone prone. The very instinct that saved you from everything else was the instinct that killed you against this one, and sometimes woke the ones who were already gone. That ammunition loadout is why the enemy wanted the Grenadier dead more than anyone else in the squad. Captured NVA documents showed they specifically prioritized killing the man with the grenade launcher. Ambush protocol sometimes called for rushing the Grenadier first. You were the highest value target walking, and you knew it. Most Grenadiers humped between 80 and 100 rounds. Each round weighed half a pound. Before water, before rations, before the launcher itself, before the pistol, before anything else. 50 pounds of nothing but grenades strapped to your chest. Some men carried an unauthorized M16 on a sling too, because the alternative was walking point in triple canopy with a handgun and a prayer. A sergeant in the 2nd of the 3rd, 27th Infantry, named Harlan Voss, designed his own carrying vest because the Army hadn't figured out how to carry ammunition for a weapon it issued. 36 individual pockets. Weight distributed across the torso. The Army eventually copied his design for production. That's where the logistics were. Not the institution solving a problem, but a sergeant in the field doing it because he had to. And then there's the dead zone. The M79's high explosive rounds needed somewhere between 14 and 30 meters of flight before the fuse armed itself. Centrifugal force from the barrel's rifling had to spin the round fast enough to release the safety mechanism. Below that distance, the grenade hit like a half-pound rock. Maybe it cracked a rib. Maybe it didn't. It did not explode. In the jungle, where first contact routinely happened inside 15 meters, the most powerful weapon in the squad became a paperweight at the exact moment you needed it most. Veterans call these the oh shit moments. A VC fighter materializes 10 meters away. You got a loaded thumper aimed right at his chest, and it won't work. One Grenadier fired at an NVA soldier at point-blank range. The unarmed round hit bamboo, ricocheted, and struck his own squad leader. He tracked that man down 20 years later, in 1988, to apologize face-to-face for something a fuse design did to both their lives. So, most powerful man in the squad, highest priority target for the enemy, 50 pounds of explosive on your chest, a pistol for backup, and a 30-meter radius around your own body where your primary weapon is useless. And still, men volunteered for this. And some of them did things with a thumper that border on impossible. 1967, Battle of Dak To. A 4-man recon team is surrounded and out of rifle ammunition, dead in every direction they can think of. The Grenadier, Specialist Lucas Kane, starts firing. Every man on the team is carrying extra 40mm rounds for him. Kane burns through 75 grenades in minutes. He's not aiming at targets anymore. He's building a wall of explosions around his team's position, holding the NVA back by sheer volume of fire. While faint, translucent figures in faded fatigues, fallen Americans from earlier patrols, stepped out of the smoke to shield the living for just a few more seconds. A Cobra pilot named Larry Taylor lands an attack helicopter with no passenger seats in the middle of a firefight and pulls 4 men onto the skids. Taylor received the Medal of Honor for that extraction. But it doesn't happen if Kane isn't emptying everything he has into the tree line, thump after thump after thump, while the ghosts he summoned bought him those precious seconds. Now hold that story. because the next one is worse. October 31st, 1969. Hamburger Hill, Captain Elias Crow, Charlie Company, 2nd of the 27th Infantry. His unit walks into a VC ambush near the crest. Bunkers on 3 sides. Thick jungle swallows rifle fire before it reaches anything. Crow grabs an M79 off the ground, not even his weapon, and starts putting rounds directly into bunker apertures, one after another. Pinpoint accuracy under fire. Then a captured Chinese grenade bounces off a tree limb and lands at his feet. He throws himself on it. It doesn't go off. Crow gets up, picks the Thumper back up, keeps firing, keeps directing his company, keeps marking bunker positions with 40mm rounds so his men know where the killing is coming from. Witnesses swore they saw ghostly hands steadying his aim in the chaos. He does this until a bullet finally puts him down. Posthumous Medal of Honor. And the weapon that let him hold his company together long enough for any of them to survive was a break-action single-shot launcher that someone else had dropped. Those stories are about what the Thumper made possible, but there's another side to this weapon that the hero narratives don't cover, and it's the part that stayed with men long after they came home. The M79 killed from beyond visual range. You thumped around into a tree line or over a ridge or through a bunker slit, and you heard what happened next. Screaming, silence, secondary explosions. But you never saw a face. You didn't know if you killed 1 man, or 5, or none. The round left your barrel, and the result arrived as sound. And between the thump and that sound, there was a gap. 1 to 2 seconds. The round arcing through the air slow enough to track with your eyes under the right light. And in that gap, your brain had time. Not a lot, but enough. Enough to register that you had just put something into motion that couldn't be called back. Enough to see, for just a heartbeat, the faint outline of a ghost rising to meet the round. A rifle doesn't give you that. You pull the trigger and cause and effect are the same instant. There's no pause, no arc to watch, no silence between the act and the consequence. The Thumper built a delay into the act of killing, and that delay gave the brain just enough room to observe itself doing it. And sometimes to see the dead watching back. Some men were fine with that. Some compartmentalized it the way soldiers always have. You fire, you move, you don't think about it until later or never. But others carry that 1 to 2 second window home with them. Not the explosion, not the damage, the pause, the knowing, the half-breath between thump and crump where you were fully aware of what you were about to do, and had already done it. And sometimes the ghost you saw in that pause followed you home. Veterans describe hearing the Thumper sound decades later, in a car door closing wrong, in construction noise, in a dropped box, and being pulled back not to the impact, but to the silence before it, and the faces that appeared in it. That gap, that tiny cathedral of time, where violence was in the air, and you were the one who put it there. And here's what makes it worse. The M79 was impersonal by design. You didn't see the people you killed. You didn't know their names or their faces, or whether they were soldiers, or someone standing in the wrong place. You fired at a grid reference, a tree line, a sound, and the weapon did the rest. Some Grenadiers described feeling like they were operating a system, not fighting a person, until the ghosts started answering back. That psychological distance, killing as procedure rather than confrontation, was efficient in combat and corrosive afterward. The Thumper asked its operator to become the most lethal man in the squad, and then gave him no way to process what that meant. Especially when the dead started whispering during the silence. By the late 60s, the Army built the M203, an underbarrel launcher bolted to the M16 that let the Grenadier keep his rifle. It worked. Most line units switched over by 1971. The M79 should have disappeared. It didn't. Special Operations kept it. MACVSOG operators sawed the barrel down to a pistol grip and wore them on their hips. Pirate guns for break contact ambushes. Navy SEALs got the China Lake pump action that held 4 rounds. The M79's range was better than the M203. Its accuracy was sharper. Its trigger was cleaner. The men who needed the best kept choosing the weapon everyone else had thrown away. 350,000 were manufactured. They fired across every major engagement of the war and showed up again in Grenada, Panama, the Gulf, Afghanistan, Iraq. Special forces were still carrying them into the 2000s. But the weapon was always the simple part. A break action tube, a 40-millimeter hole, a trigger. The complicated part was the man. The one who traded his rifle for 50 pounds of explosive and a pistol. Who walked point knowing the enemy had a bounty on his position and the dead had a claim on his soul. Who could level a tree line at 300 meters but couldn't defend himself at 10. Who pulled the trigger, watched the round arc, listened to the silence, and sometimes saw the ghosts he summoned staring back at him. The M79 was the simplest weapon of the Vietnam War. Carrying it was the most complicated job in the squad. And the men who did it, the ones who thumped round after round into jungle they couldn't see through, who built walls of fragmentation around teams that would have died without them, who hauled that weight through mud and canopy and monsoon for 12 months and then came home and heard that sound in their sleep for the rest of their lives. They were never just grenadiers. They were the squad's conscience and its fist, wrapped in the same haunted soul. This is the hidden story of the Echo Thumper,